Concord is Sony's brand new hero shooter. It has an open beta that you can sign up for and play right now, unless of course you're on a Steam Deck or Linux. This is by all accounts a game that I'm not really that interested in, and honestly I wouldn't be talking about it if not for this interesting situation. See, Concord relies on a piece of software known as PlayStation Overlay. It's an overlay for PlayStation Network features, things like PlayStation trophies or online play. And in this case, you need PlayStation Overlay to play this always online title. And no, this doesn't work on Steam Deck. This is actually the second game released with PlayStation Overlay, with the PC release of Ghost of Tsushima being the first PC title with PlayStation Overlay. And while you don't need PlayStation Overlay to play the entire game offline in single player mode, if you wanted to play the multiplayer mode or do any PSN features like trophies and whatnot, then you have to play the game on Windows. The PSN stuff does not work on Steam Deck or Linux for that matter. This is a worrying trend because Sony was seen as a sort of strong ally to the Steam Deck. Sony started bringing their titles over to PC, and many of them work pretty well on Steam Deck. Stuff like God of War or Spider-Man Remastered, or even Spider-Man Miles Morales. If Nicx's developed the port, then you know it's going to be good. And you know that it's going to run surprisingly well on Steam Deck. PlayStation games were the AAA experience without a lot of the baggage. No required sign-ins. While you could sign into PSN on those games, it wasn't strictly a requirement. There also wasn't any invasive DRM, so you could play these games offline without any issue whatsoever. These are all great candidates for games that work really well on Steam Deck, and as a result, many of their games are Steam Deck verified. But starting with Ghost of Tsushima, it's marked as unsupported, which is pretty unfortunate because the game works on Steam Deck, at least the single player works, but you can't access all of the features, which, you know, makes it grounds for being unsupported. This sounds like a hysteria piece because PlayStation Overlay is only on 2 games, but we already see it being a requirement for Concord. Hell, it was almost a requirement for Helldivers 2. They nearly completely killed Helldivers 2 with their poor decisions. Sony, I mean, not Arrowhead Studios. So now for the big question. Why won't they make PlayStation Overlay work well on Linux or even Steam Deck? We're not asking them to make a native Linux version, we're just asking them to make the overlay work well with Proton, which by the way, it doesn't obviously. But yes, while Concord may not be the most interesting PlayStation game, it's a sign of what's to come for the Steam Deck community if Sony doesn't change anything, if they don't make it Steam Deck compatible. Because I am 100% certain that Sony is going to add this to all of their brand new titles that they release on PC. And of course, there's a non-zero chance that Sony could retroactively add this to all of their existing games, including Helldivers 2, which of course would make Helldivers 2 completely unplayable on Steam Deck. And yes, while single player games can be played on Steam Deck completely offline without the need of PlayStation Overlay, there's no telling if Sony will change that at all. It certainly is the trend for PC gaming to require a login. Now, there's no evidence of Sony changing this, but it is possible. There is a non-0% chance that this could happen. Imagine buying God of War Ragnarok and all of a sudden it does require PSN to play, period. That God of War Ragnarok requires PlayStation Overlay and PSO doesn't work on Steam Deck. How would that make you feel? Well, if I'm looking at the store page right now, it says it requires a PSN account. Requires, meaning you have to have one. Could Sony change this? Well, they could have changed this when they announced it, or they could have just made this not applicable at all. There's no telling what will happen. This is the state of Sony's PlayStation Overlay as of the making of this video. And while I talk about there being a non-0% chance that Sony will make things worse, there's also a non-0% chance that Sony will make things a little better. Chiefly by making PlayStation Overlay work on Steam Deck. You see companies like EA and Ubisoft who are infamous for having these crappy overlays, and their overlays work on Linux or Steam Deck just fine. And Sony has some of the most talented developers under their wing, some of the smartest people in the industry. They could figure out how to make it work on Linux. Or are you just mandating that they make it not work on Linux? But I'll tell you what though. If Sony makes things better, I will unlist the video. I'll keep it up for archival purposes, but if Sony does this one little thing, make PlayStation Overlay work on Linux and Steam Deck, and if this does come to pass, then this video will become completely pointless, and as such, I will be taking it down. I'll be unlisting it. But until then, this video shall remain. If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos, and if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.